It's my job as a sacred artist to create something that draws the person up to the highest beauty, to God. I had this period of darkness, of having health problems, feeling isolated. Sometimes you feel like a saint's kind of becoming your friend. I did start to feel St. Joan of Arc's presence in my prayer life. She's a good one to ask for bravery and steadfastness to carry out the will of God. When I'm painting a piece like this that's going to be in a certain setting, you think about who it's for, the generations of children that will come through. And I think about when I was little, which images I saw and which ones made me feel safe and loved and that Christ is approachable. Hopefully I'm helping them form a really positive image. I grew up in St. Francisville, which is a small town north of Baton Rouge. We were always outside in the woods together. I think being in the stillness of the woods creates within a person the ability to be still and to observe. We grew up in the Catholic Church. My personal faith life and prayer life began to grow a lot as a teenager. I went through a lot emotionally, and there were certain images that would come in prayer that just kind of helped me to understand certain things in my life. And that really helped to deepen my faith. I always loved making art as a child. I knew pretty early on, and that's what I was made for. When I was in high school, I wanted to go to art school. My mom was just a little worried. She was like, I think you need to go to a Catholic school. Like, I don't think you're ready for art school. So art was kind of put on the back burner in college, and I majored in humanities and Catholic culture. I loved the education I received. It was very important for me. But that hunger to be an artist didn't go away. And so I decided to study in Florence at a sacred art school. When I studied in Florence, I used the same palette as my instructor, a pretty earthy palette. It does have some cadmiums in it that are brighter. As I've returned to the U.S. and, done more of my own work, it seems I just keep adding more and more colors. In this image, there are the 6-winged seraphim, which surround the throne of God. I'm using blue jay wings, kind of like a little local touch and little play on the traditional representation of seraphim. As a sacred artist, you want to give your best to glorify God. Being in Florence, where you just have so many examples of the highest levels that an artist can reach, definitely inspired me to work as hard as I could to develop my skill. The tradition of Catholic art dates all the way back to the very beginning of the faith. There's an endless variety that we can learn from and look to and be inspired by. For me, to create something within the Catholic tradition means looking back at how this theme has been represented. How does this exist within our tradition and within the Catholic imagination? And then what do I have to bring to it? How does my own life experience impact how I'm going to represent certain saints or holy figures? You know, at different times in my life, I was very timid and very afraid. And I think Saint Joan of Arc is a big inspiration. During the periods of desolation and darkness, she's a good one to ask for bravery. So this is the church my parents were actually married in. It's really a magnificent, beautiful church, painted by Gregory DeWitt, who was a Benedictine monk. When I sketch in a church, when I have that opportunity, it's a time of study of what the artist did, the way that they've depicted the saints and holy figures and biblical scenes. Maybe I'm just looking at a little part of it, or it's this little design within it. There's kind of this reputation of the Christ here being this imposing figure, but I think if you understand the tradition of this type of image and the iconography behind it, you kind of just get familiar with it, and it's not, intimidating. I find it beautiful. A church like this that's so beautiful is just a gift. During times of darkness, depression, anxiety, being in a beautiful space, it's such a source of inspiration. It just feeds your soul. After 2 years in Florence, I was offered a job at my alma mater, Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio, and a lot of the transition was pretty rough. I went from working in a studio with lots of friends and people I grew in a relationship with to this profound sense of loneliness and feeling isolated, even though there were people around me that were friends. There was the period of not knowing what was going on and not knowing where to get answers. And then it was like everything in my environment overwhelmed me. Every noise felt heightened. And so I remember looking up at this light in the parking lot that was buzzing and just feeling like that, just feeling like completely on edge and panicky, and that at any moment something bad was gonna happen. I remember, some of my darkest moments, feeling like I was under spiritual attack, just asking for help. I think I did receive it when I asked. I didn't feel like I was just screaming out into this empty chasm. I felt responses. There are these saints that are praying for us. They get it, and they get it on the deepest level. It was a time of darkness, but it wasn't a time without a glimmer of light. And I received insights that have stayed with me, and are part of my spiritual life. During that time, I continued to paint. There wasn't a dryness in my life as an artist. If anything, there's a greater depth. And these different intense emotions can really inform your work. That's not downplaying the struggle you're going through, but it can bring this depth of understanding that's going to be manifest in the work that you do. I lived out of state and country for 10 years. When we finally made that leap to Louisiana, it was a coming home. I was approached to paint St. Joan of Arc for a parish that had been impacted by Hurricane Ida. The pastor decided that it would be a refreshing take to convey her as a maiden rather than in her battle armor. St. Joan of Arc was working in her family's garden when she first heard the voice of St. Michael. It's that moment of her listening very intently. I used all local flora for the natural plants around her. So it's not just this historical scene of her in France. It's supposed to be her here in Louisiana. Behind her, you see the holy figures that she received messages from that instructed her for this great mission that God had for her. The idea behind portraying St. Joan as a young maiden was to portray her as one of us, an ordinary girl. She was just following the will of God. She just listened to his counsel. She was very brave. She was challenged and belittled and eventually martyred. At every step, she was completely at peace. My desire is that someone can encounter this painting and relate to Joan. God has a mission and a will for all of our lives. No matter how simple or profound, he speaks to all of us.